Hi everyone, Dr. Richard Tran here from Color Chiropractic in Bellingham, Washington. I'm here to give another interview of one of our referral partners. I'm really excited on this one as well. This is Dr. Wren McLaughlin, and to really say that she's a physical therapist would be putting it lightly, let's just say, because she has a unique approach and a specialty that really focuses on women's health and incorporating practices like postural restoration, medical qigong, and integrative health coaching. We're going to kind of go into some of the different aspects of what goes in line with that, but I thought we could be able to introduce her to you here. So, welcome, Ren.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here chatting with you, and I do just want to share with everyone that Rich and we met, I think, in 2011, when we were both practicing in the Fairhaven area. And I remember you talking about this project of wanting to interview people and just to share more with the community. So kudos to making this happen and for just all your wonderful service to our community over the years.
Thanks a lot. Let's start off with this. What inspired you to pursue women's health into, let's say, your physical therapy?
Yeah. 25 years ago, I took a psychobiology class, psychobiology of women, and it really changed my life. And for the first time, I felt empowered with knowledge and really proud to be living in my body. And also, I just got really fired up about helping other female-bodied people understand themselves and, love being in their bodies. I'd never considered that the menstrual cycle is a gift and that it's a vital sign for our health. I was raised in a culture where periods were nothing more than a challenge when you were playing sports or wanting to swim, and that your cycling hormones were inconvenient and that emotional expression meant you were weak. And I'm sure, a lot of people listening can identify with that culture around women's health. So this psychobiology of women course was my first glimpse that monthly rhythms could be valued and that, sexual intimacy is about communication and self-worth and shared responsibility. And that, the guilt and the shame and the violence doesn't have to be accepted as like a normal part of living as female-bodied. And so the other, that really is my inspiration for women's health. And then the other inspiration is around my work with postural restoration. And I was introduced to the postural restoration technique actually as a graduate student. And it's a method of looking at our breathing, our postural holding patterns, and our neurosensory perceptual experience of how that impacts how we relate and move in the world. So I hope that, maybe I'll have time to talk a little bit more about that. But those two, the women's health and the PRI, are really the foundations of my clinical practice.
Wow.
Because the postural restoration approach is about nervous system regulation and that, our breathing patterns are very related to our emotional holding. And I do want to talk more as we go about how we integrate this like physical, emotional, spiritual component. But I do really feel like the two, there's a lot of power to the two because we have a breathing diaphragm and we have a pelvic diaphragm and a cranial diaphragm. And all three of those diaphragms really need to be coordinated and in rhythm for our function to be optimized.
Wow, that's really interesting. So let's even get into it. Can you describe your experience with working with different women? You might want to take it anywhere that you want, but in different stages of life, the idea of pregnancy or postpartum or menopause, even integrating it with what you do with the 3 different diaphragms. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, one thing I want to just pause on is that the title women's health is really tricky for a couple of reasons. One, there are people with a uterus and ovaries and breasts who don't identify as a woman who might feel excluded by that. And then there are also people with testes and a penis who need support for their pelvic floor. So some therapists call themselves pelvic floor therapists, but then the field also includes like the treatment of osteoporosis, which is common, more common in women, and cancer and lymphedema and pregnancy-related issues that don't always include, the pelvic floor. So what I like to say is, like, I treat all people, but I do specialize in issues that are more common to people with female body parts.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So, this question of like, well, how do I work with people through their different life stages? And I think what's unique for women is that there are these transformations that happen that traditionally were marked by rites of passage, by community support, by other women who'd already gone through these important changes. And so with these passages, and I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the terminology that I use, there's always like a separation, right? Like the end of something, a transformation, and then an integration period. And our system needs to feel safe to complete those processes. And often the physical symptoms that are presenting are an expression of these incomplete cycles. And so I look at these 4 archetypal patterns that are unique to women: Maiden, Mother, Virgin, and Crone. And so I'll just kind of just briefly, I know you're going, how does this relate to posture? But, okay, so Maiden, right, that's that spring energy. That's when a girl first begins her bleeding. She first begins her rhythmic living, where she, releases each month and cultivates a creative cycle each month. And this is the time when a lot of adolescents develop painful periods. And our culture and our medical system says, oh, okay, we'll solve this by just blocking the hormones. We just put girls on oral contraceptives.
Sure.
And so, I'll work with teens and young adults who maybe have endometriosis or, painful periods for lots of different reasons. But a big part of that is that the nervous system is dysregulated. And so how did the nervous system get dysregulated in the first place? And so it may be that there's a strong postural pattern. For example, they can only breathe through one nostril. And airflow, we need to be able to alternate and reciprocate. And so if we've got airflow that's always coming in one side, our nervous system doesn't have that balancing that it needs. And so even though it may be presenting as something, and maybe there was a trauma, but we get into this cycle of dysregulation and postural holding patterns that, and again, I'm still in this sort of like, that's what's most typical in that maiden time. That working, and I think you can relate to this from a chiropractic perspective, right? Of like working on putting things helping things be in the right position and calming the nervous system, that can really positively influence a symptom like painful periods.
Sure.
Yeah. So, again, back to these archetypal patterns, then we have the pattern of mother, and this would be like that summer energy. And this doesn't have to be about like bearing children. It could be, having pets, creative projects, businesses, but it's a really like embodied, lots of movement, lots of sacrifice, so high energy expenditure, which results in like overuse injuries, pelvic floor symptoms postpartum, maybe carpal tunnel or running injuries. And a lot of time women in this time need that like yin nourishment. They need not to do more. They need to actually slow down and nourish themselves. And so again, a way how we incorporate like the posture in that is, you know, movements that again are helping balance those diaphragms, because a pelvic floor, maybe it's not that the pelvic floor is weak, it's that the pelvic floor has been overworking because of the demands on the system. Wow. The next one is virgin, and I think this is the one that's confusing. But the idea with virgin is it's being whole unto yourself. So it's like a wholeness that develops, and this is the fall energy, that harvest time. Okay. And so this is the time where a woman is discovering who she truly is. She's learning to be true to herself. She's learning to trust herself. And depending on how her rites of passage through these other transformations have been so far, you know, she may be exhausted. She may not be fully connected to her sexuality. She may be still experiencing residual symptoms from, you know, when she became a mother. But what's different here is the curiosity around what's going on is more of like, oh, I actually have some time to devote to myself, as opposed to, you know, this is all about taking care of everybody else. And so during this phase, I use more of the medical Qigong, which is going to help release some of the old patterns, past traumas. And also for some women, they've never been introduced to this idea of cyclic living, or of the power that having a menstrual cycle provides a female-bodied individual. And so introducing that now is a way of like reclaiming that autonomy and power. Wow. Okay. And then the last one, just to hit menopause, is like this Crone time, which is the winter season, which is the wisdom years. And so sometimes we'll see pelvic floor symptoms actually come back during this time, or maybe they didn't have them, but then we can trace them back to some of earlier in life, and hot flushes and mood swings. And all of those pieces really require an integrated approach.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty interesting, because it seems like these are different stages, not even in terms of, let's say, a monthly, you know, cycle that they might have, but it's like a life cycle that they might be expressing, and that through recognizing whether a person's in a certain pattern of that expression, can you actually direct your therapies to more normalize the body? I mean, in a way, that's what I'm starting to see, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's just bringing it into awareness, and so those cycles can complete.
And I mean, how do they get to know you more?
Yeah, so again, like you said at the beginning, I've expanded what I do so much from the traditional physical therapy, and so my business is called Whole Women Wellness, and I have a website, www.wholewomen.wellness.com, and I offer individual sessions, and I also offer workshops and Qigong classes. And so part of what I am really committed to is building community, because as women, you know, once you start realizing, wow, all these, like maybe I miss this rite of passage. Well, it's not to say that we can't create that and build community where we feel safe to express and experience what our body needs to be able to, you know, live into our wholeness and our fullness.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I do have, if you go to my website, there's a place you can sign up for the newsletter. And that'll keep you up to date on the different offerings that I have.
I mean, like I said, it's just a fascinating thing whenever, like I said, when I came into the community, just knowing these different types of therapists, and in much ways, it's like you go to different chiropractors and you can gain different types of experiences depending on what that person has been through. And you're just a clear example where you might think about physical therapy in one way, and how the way that you really applied it is a result of really the experiences that you've gone through, the cases that you've seen, and the ways that you really implement your craft of what you do. So this has been a really cool way of introducing people to your type of work. And I hope that, people that are checking out this will be able to see more, check out more of Wren's, different classes, or how to really get connected with her, because the idea of community can be so powerful, especially when you get a group of people working together. So, Wren, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rich. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.